I got to be honest with you. I'm starting out this episode of the Ball Don't Lie podcast, and I'm running hot. I'm been trying to cool myself off, but I'm running hot. I'll explain. Hi, hello, and welcome in to the Ball Don't Lie podcast. This is episode number 177, and we're going to get to Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. We're going to get to Dalton Risner re-signing. We're going to get to talking about the urgency of this team. That's all coming up. But I got to tell you, I'm madder than a wet hornet right now. I'm frustrated. I'm angry about something. So I said last week in the episode, my favorite story in sports was 2311 Racing. Tyler Reddick for Michael Jordan's racing team in NASCAR had won the first two races of the year. Well, he continued and won again at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, a road course. He's the first NASCAR driver ever to win the first three races of the year. And I had told one of my buddies prior to the race, I said, listen, if a Michael Jordan owned car wins again today, I'm going to buy merch. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And he agreed. And so, sure enough, Tyler Reddick wins again in Austin. And I go to the website and I buy a 2311 hat. It's fire. It's white. It's black. It looks great. I'm fired up about it. It's going to ship. It's going to be here in time. I can wear it on the podcast. I can wear it this week. Like, cool. I'm excited. And so, 4:57 p.m., I get a notification. It's been delivered. Fantastic. This is on Tuesday, right? And I ordered this thing on Sunday night. Incredibly fast shipping. I'm excited. 4:57. I don't get off work until 6. I got off about 5:50, 5:55, something along those lines. I get to my apartment building about an hour after the photo was sent of the package sitting in front of the door, and the package is nowhere to be found. I get there 1 hour later. It's rainy, it's wet, nobody's outside, package is gone. I look in the other buildings. I look in my mailbox. I look all around. Nowhere to be found. It's not in the lobby. It's not on the third floor. Not on the first floor. Not on the second floor. Not at the back door. Nobody left it at my door. Nowhere to be found. And if you know me at all, you know I've had my stuff stolen before. My mail and my packages stolen before. And it used to be that I lived in a crappy place, in a crappy area, blah, 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 blah. This place I thought was different. I thought I wouldn't have to be dealing with this stuff at this new apartment, but I am, and my package was stolen. And then, of course, you got to jump through 1,000 different hoops. You contact the people at Fanatics and you say, "Hey, this is what happened." They say, "Well, you got to the people who shipped it. You got to talk to them." And you talk to the people that shipped it. And they're like, "Well, give us a couple days to check, and if nothing happens, then you got to contact the people who you bought it from." And I got to get reference numbers. I got to get case numbers. I got to send all my information, tracking number. I'm just like, can I just get my hat? Number one, it's overly complicated. And number two, why do people keep stealing shit? Stop stealing other people's mail. I just don't understand it. And like, what did you think? Whoever you are, when you open up that box and it's a 2311 racing hat. Listen, in my area, there's probably not a lot of NASCAR fans. I can only imagine where that hat is right now. It's probably in somebody's trash or on eBay or in who why would you even put it on eBay? And or Facebook Marketplace or it's in the dumpster out back. Like what it just it just pisses me off to no end. Just stop stealing people's mail, please. Okay, anyways, let's talk about the Bengals, shall we? The Bengals have all of a sudden gotten busy. The NFL scouting combine is over, and now we are transitioning to the legal tampering slash free agency period. And there was one deadline that had to be taken care of first before all of that, and that was the franchise tag deadline. Well, the Bengals got a couple of things done prior to that deadline. Let's start with the re-signing of Dalton Risner. Dalton Risner was signed by the Bengals right before week 1 last year against the Cleveland Browns. He came in and he was a little bit shaky, didn't necessarily play well at first. At one point was benched for Jalen Rivers, who was a rookie, and Jalen was struggling, and eventually Dalton goes back in. and it clicks. The offensive line plays better. There's a connection between Ted Karras and Risner and Amarius Mims, and Dylan Fairchild had a really good season. Orlando Brown Jr. was playing fine. So the offensive line, by a lot of statistics, was one of the best, if not the best. Actually, it was the best when you look at all the data in the Joe Burrow era. So this is a positive, right? Like, this is a good thing. You've got to keep this together. Orlando Brown Jr. is under contract, Fairchild's under contract, Karras is under contract, and Mims is under contract. But Risner had just signed that 1-year deal. So it was a layup, a lot of people thought, because Dalton Risner said at the end of the year, I want to be in Cincinnati. I want to be a Cincinnati Bengal. I played really well here. The offense fits me. The people fit me. I want to play for Joe Burrow. I want to play for Zach Taylor. I want to be in Cincinnati. This felt like a layup for the Bengals. That was the word that was used to describe it multiple times throughout the early part of this offseason. But we always get the sense that the Bengals are going to make things harder than they need to be. And that was kind of the feeling we were getting. I talked about it on this podcast that it sounded like, based off what Duke Tobin said at the scouting combine, that those two sides were far apart and that Risner was going to take it to free agency and test it out and see if he could get a better deal. Well, I was wrong about that. Dalton Risner really didn't want to be anywhere else, really didn't entertain the thought of being anywhere else, took probably less money than he would have gotten elsewhere to come back to Cincinnati and play with the Bengals, to the point where it was a 1-year deal worth a total of $3.25 million, and there are incentives that can push it up to $5 million. If you look, if you're talking, I mean, that's a steal for a guy like Dalton Risner, who has that experience and who played at the level that he played at last year. Now, the Bengals still need to address the offensive line. Depth on the offensive line is something that needs to be addressed both in free agency and in the NFL draft. But with the re-signing of Risner, you now have all. Let me try that again. But with the re-signing of Risner, you now have all 11 starters back on offense. That is incredibly important when you consider all the work that needs to be done on the defense and the cap space that they have. It makes sense to get Dalton Risner back in the fold. Still have to address the depth of that position, but the continuity, that's been the theme of the offseason, right? With the coaching staff, with the offense, getting Dalton Risner back continues the theme of continuity. Now, they went on to diverge from the path of continuity with Trey Hendrickson. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, I want to play for you the first 4 minutes and 16 seconds of Dalton Risner's press conference after it had been announced that he was coming back to Cincinnati on a 1-year deal. And I want to preface this by saying I've never heard a player talk like this. Now, he ended up talking for almost half an hour. And in a lot of the things he said, he dispelled a lot of the things that people say about the Bengals. And we'll get into the NFLPA report cards later on this offseason because we're going to need to talk more about it. But a lot of the things that people negatively say about the Bengals and the way that they treat their players and the way they treat families and all this other stuff, Dalton Risner kind of dispelled that over the course of the 20-25 minutes that he talked to the media. But in the first 5 minutes, you feel this energy and this passion and this excitement. Again, this is a $5 million deal for 1 year. And yet Dalton Risner, and I put this out on my Twitter at Auty Elmore, Dalton Risner was talking about a 1-year, $5 million deal like somebody who just signed a 10-year, $750 million deal. I've never seen this much excitement from a guy who signed such a small deal. And I think it's just really refreshing to hear a heart of gratitude like you're hearing from a guy like Dalton Risner. Take a listen to the first 4 minutes and 16 seconds of his press conference from Monday.
Stoked to be here, guys.
What was this process like for you this time around?
Good to see you, bro. Appreciate all your belief all year, all the really great things you said about me, man. It really means a lot to me, bro. So really good to see you again. Also really grateful for my head coach here. A big reason why I wanted to come back to Cincinnati is because of Zach Taylor. And I'm probably going to say a lot today that has nothing to do with the questions that you asked, but I just feel like I'm full of gratitude coming back and being with Scott Peters. Just got to give Orlando Brown a hug. Was on the phone last night with Mims. I've talked to Ted. I've talked to Joe. Just so many people, including the fan base, including all of you guys, the city, the restaurant Jeff Ruby's. I mean, I could go on and on about every reason why I wanted to come back and how you guys have welcomed me and my wife with open arms. But we've known about this deal for like the last 48 hours, and it's been one of like the hardest secrets to keep ever. So my little Adam Schefter back there got to break the news this morning, which I thought was pretty exciting. As you get later in your career, I feel like you try to have some fun with this because you never know when it's going to be the last year. So yeah, I'm just super overwhelmed, man, with gratitude and thankfulness to come back here, especially with the ups and downs of last season. And I think I just answered everything but your question. What did you ask me?
No, it's all right. That happens all
Okay.
the time. So
Yeah.
how much, what was this process like this time around? I know you
Yeah.
wanted to get this done early instead of,
Yeah.
like, how much was that a factor in all this?
I think it was a huge factor, truth be told. And I think I can say this because it's after the season, I told everyone this is where I wanted to be. So when it came to this process, of course, it did take a little bit of time. The Bengals and myself, I think, were proactive in getting this deal done ever since the season ended. But it got to a point for me where I started putting pressure on the agent. I got one of the best agents in the world in Drew Rosenhaus, but I truly did mean what I said. I didn't really care to hit free agency and see if someone wanted to sign me to a 2 or 3 year deal or maybe pay me more cash per year. I wanted to be a Cincinnati Bengal, and it got to a point where we were so close in terms that it was time to get a deal done. So the Bengals did a lot of compromising, and I did a lot of compromising, and we came to a middle point, to a middle ground to sign the deal, and I was so thankful for that. I got to give Duke Tobin a hug today, Mike Brown, Katie, I mean, on and on, Steven, so many people upstairs that I'm thankful for, but this process was just so much different because I've never felt this way about an organization. I've never truly just wanted to be back and not even test my market. And I'm at the point in my career where this is where I'm going to be my best with Scott Peters and Joe Burrow and Ted Karras and Amarius Mims. And I didn't really care about the logistics side of it. This is where I want to be.
What was it about this offensive line room that just fit you? Like, you guys seem to have such great chemistry together. What is it that why you came in and it was such a good connection?
Yeah, it's a great question. I truly feel like I've never been seen or valued like I have here. And I think that started in the offensive line room, and that started with Ted Karras. Ted Karras is Cincinnati Bengals through and through. It's crazy. I've never been a guy to look up to very many people, and I've truly always just said, like, Jesus is like the only person I've ever like truly looked up to, but I look up to Ted in a lot of ways. And I remember after my very first game, he had like this crazy quote that he gave to Dan, and I even loved it so much I had Dan send it to me, and it's saved in my phone. It was talking about, I don't know, Dan, do you remember it?
Yeah, it was the greatest example of professionalism he had ever witnessed.
Ever displayed. And you guys know Ted, he really fluffed it up. It was great. But like, I just think to your question that Ted opened the door and put his arms wide open and said like we take you as you are. And it made it to where I could just come in here and be exactly who I was. And then Orlando Brown, I think, was getting interviewed by one of you, and someone asked him about me. And he just said, "Oh, this guy's a dog. Like, we need him. He's going to help us win games." And I never talked to these guys. And they're speaking so highly of me, and they're the centerfolds of this football team. And I don't know what I did to deserve that, but really grateful that they did. And I think that because of the way they opened their arms and accepted me, allowed me to come in here and just focus on being exactly who I was.
I mean, you don't hear athletes talk like that. You don't hear athletes say, "I didn't want to go anywhere else. I didn't even want to test my market. I wanted to be right here. I wanted to play for this coach." Like, you rarely hear that level of honesty, that level of transparency, especially when it comes to negotiations and stuff like this and saying, "Hey, they compromised. I compromised. I told my agent it's time to get a deal done." Like, I just have so much respect and appreciation for that. Now, the Bengals, I think, lowballed him and use that to their advantage. And that's not a surprise, knowing them and knowing how they operate. But because of all the things, the intangibles, the off the field stuff, the teammates, the fit, Dalton Risner was willing to compromise. He was willing to say, "Listen, I've made a lot of money. I've done a lot of stuff. This feels right. I want to be here. I want to stay here." And I just was so impressed by that and whole interaction, the whole 25 minutes of Dalton Risner talking to the media. And I'll tell you, between him and Joe Flacco, like, they have just made quite an impression on me just because of their honesty and the way that they very openly are not afraid to share what they're thinking and what they're feeling and what is important to them. And I think that's really cool. And I think we're in an age where we need more of that from athletes. So let's transition to the second one of the offseason, the second box to be checked. Well, Tuesday, March 3rd, 4 p.m., that's the deadline for teams to use the franchise tag. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know about the franchise tag and you know about Trey Hendrickson. I've said for a long time I don't expect the Bengals to use it. Although Duke Tobin said last week that, I'm not taking anything off the table when it comes to Trey Hendrickson. I didn't expect I didn't expect the Bengals to all of a sudden change their mind. They should have traded him a year ago. They didn't. They tried to trade him a couple of different times over the course of the last 12 months. It hasn't worked out. The Bengals never had Trey Hendrickson in their plans beyond 2025. That's just a fact. And so here we are. Trey Hendrickson's contract is expiring. The Bengals had the opportunity to franchise tag him for $30 million, and they said no. So a week from now, Trey Hendrickson will become an unrestricted free agent. And listen, this contract situation, this squabble has gone poorly on both sides. It's gone poorly because Trey has accepted deals that maybe he shouldn't have. It's gone poorly because the Bengals have offered things that maybe they shouldn't have and should have extended maybe earlier or different conceded different parts of the deal here or there, or whatever it might be. The Bengals have also failed to adequately build around Trey Hendrickson, which has prolonged the process of trying to re-sign him and trying to extend him and so on. Trey Hendrickson is the best free agent signing in the history of the Bengals franchise. And what he did should not be disparaged. It should not be minimized. It should not be forgotten. He was a huge part, an integral part of one of the most successful, if not the most successful runs of football in the history of this Bengals franchise. He was a massive part of it, and he deserves a ton of credit for it. I have no ill will towards Trey Hendrickson. I just feel like where he was at, where the organization was at, in the path that these two sides are taking and are on, are no longer going to cross. And so it's the right thing for them to move on. I wish they would have traded him and gotten something for him, but that just didn't seem like a realistic possibility after this past season. It should have happened prior to or during the past season, but it didn't. The Bengals, I do think, screwed that part up, but they're at this point now, and they're going in a different direction. They have $30+ million that is not going to be allocated to Trey Hendrickson that they can use to spend on other parts of their defense that have to be fixed. And so I'm thankful for Trey Hendrickson and all the time that the Bengals had with him and that Bengals fans got to see him. He was a beast. He was described, I saw, as a lone wolf. He was a closer at times. He finished games for the Bengals when they needed it. But these two sides are just going in different directions. And that's the unfortunate reality. It was probably going to happen sooner at some point. It probably should have happened sooner, but this is where we're at. And all you can do is kind of tip the cap to Trey Hendrickson and say, hey, man, thanks for the memories. Best of luck to you somewhere else. I don't have high expectations for Trey. I don't know if at a guy that's going to be turning 32 years old is going to be able, who's not an elite athlete, to produce at that level. And maybe he proves me wrong. And I would love it if he does. But I just feel like this is the right move for the Bengals. So now we shift towards free agency. And the next time we talk, it'll be right in the middle of free agency. There will be some deals signed. There will be legal tampering happening. So we're going to do multiple episodes next week breaking down what's going on in free agency and hopefully hearing multiple signings from the Bengals. My stance on the Bengals in free agency is this. I expect them to be proactive. I expect them to spend. I expect them to fill holes to put themselves in a position by the time the draft rolls around that they can take the best player available. And the reason I say this is because I think and I hope and I assume that the Bengals feel the urgency of this past season. They feel the pressure mounting when it comes to Joe Burrow. They feel the pressure mounting of 3 consecutive years without making the postseason. The statement at the end of the year that mentions both Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor, I think, is important and something that needs to be remembered as we go throughout this offseason. There are teams that operate with urgency and those who don't. I often talk about what I consider to be the aggressive pursuit of a championship. I've seen the Bengals do that at times in the past. I don't think the last couple of years qualifies as that. I think this season, this offseason, they get back towards the aggressive pursuit of a championship. And I think the reason for that is that there is urgency within the building And there is pressure being put on Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor and others, not only by the quarterback, Joe Burrow, but by members of ownership as well, to fix all the shit that's gone wrong for the last couple of years. And that's how it should be. There are GMs and directors of player personnel and head coaches and scouts and personnel departments that operate thinking about, okay, well, if we draft this player, well, then down the line, he's going to cost us this much and blah, 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 blah. And then there are others who say, we need this player because he can help us win right now. That has to be the mentality for the Bengals. You cannot afford to miss the postseason again. You have 3-4 years left of Higgins, Burrow, and Chase. It's time to go, and it's time to go right now. And so you need Duke Tobin, you need Zach Taylor, you need the entire organization from the top down to operate with urgency so that this offseason can be successful. And I would also, put a lot of challenge towards Duke Tobin because, I'm fond of Duke. I think Duke is an interesting guy. I think he says some off the wall shit. I don't believe in him though. And why should I? And my guy Lance McAllister, my colleague Lance McAllister, my coworker, after the Duke Tobin press conference last week, and you heard most of it here, he said this on his Twitter page, and I agree with him 100%. He said, no matter how many times Duke Tobin speaks, no matter what he says, he's still the guy that has built 24 Bengals teams that have produced a 482 winning percentage. They are 185, 199, and 4 since Duke Tobin has been the director of player personnel. They have had just 11 winning seasons among those 24. He has just 2 playoff appearances in the last decade. These are just facts. And Lance is 1,000% correct. And I think the external pressure and the spotlight that is on the organization and the pressure of Joe Burrow and not winning and the pressure that the coach feels, all of that, I think Duke Tobin for the first time is feeling it. I think he should be feeling it. And I think that we've got to remember this is a dude who hasn't done anything, has not produced enough. And maybe he's safe and maybe he's insulated and maybe he's part of the family. Okay. But that doesn't change the fact that he needs to be operating with a sense of urgency, with the mindset of, if I do not produce, I won't be here anymore. And for a guy who talks a big talk, he doesn't walk enough of the walk. This is an opportunity for Duke Tobin to change this entire thing, the entire narrative around him and this franchise this offseason. I hope he does it. As far as some of the players that I'd like to see the Bengals sign, well, I printed some stuff off. I've got a piece of paper here. Offensively, I'm not, not crazy about anybody on offense. Dalton Risner obviously being here, it plays a big role. I want them to figure out their offensive line, and I think they should, and I think they will. And I don't know enough about some of those backup offensive linemen to go on a rant about all of this. But some of the defensive players that I would love to see them sign, an interior defensive lineman like John Franklin Myers, a edge rusher like Kaylavon Chason, a linebacker like Devin Bush, Quay Walker, Demario Davis, Bobby Wagner, Alex Anzalone, all of those guys I would be open to the Bengals signing. And by the way, linebacker is a position that's been brought up a lot over the last couple of weeks. The Bengals are going to sign a veteran linebacker. You can book that. It's going to happen. All right. Now, who it is and when it is, I don't exactly know, but there's a list of good available linebackers that fit exactly what the Bengals want to do. I'd keep an eye on Devin Bush. I'd keep an eye on Demario Davis as well. There are cornerbacks that are available, guys like Rasul Douglas, guys like Greg Newsome. What about safeties like Brian Cook and Kobe Bryant, both former Cincinnati Bearcats? What about Jaquan Brisker? DJ Reader is available. Calais Campbell is available. Draymond Jones, who was traded to Baltimore midseason. These are all guys that I want the Bengals to go after, guys that I think would help the Bengals right away. We'll learn more about that next week when free agency officially begins. Hey, if you're listening to this and it's not yet the weekend, maybe it's not yet Friday, or maybe it is Friday, I want to tell you, I'm on 700 WLW from 6 to 9 on Friday night. I'm in for Lance McAllister, who I just mentioned. We're going to talk a lot. We're going to talk to Jeff Hobson, the senior writer from Bengals.com. The Bengals revamped their offseason process, their scouting department, and how they go about things. I want to ask Jeff about that. He wrote about it. We'll also talk to Tommy Thrall, the voice of the Cincinnati Reds out in Goodyear, Arizona for spring training. We'll talk to Paul Fritzner, Mr. College Basketball from the Rebound Rundown podcast. He'll join me as well as Miami looks to go perfect, assuming they're winning right now. That's a big assumption, but I'm assuming that they're winning right now. Either way, that's Friday night, March the 7th, March the 6th, March the 7th, whatever it is, from 6 to 9 on 700 WLW. I invite you to listen. Of course, weekdays, noon to 3 with Tony Pike on Cincy 360 on ESPN 1530. Thank you so much for listening. Please like the podcast, follow it, share it with a friend, and we'll talk to you again next week. And as always, have fun, be safe, go Bucks.